My name is Liming Stroh. I am the founder and CEO of Master the World. I'm going to introduce our two hosts, starting with Madeline Triffon. Hey, Madeline, Master Sommelier, where are you coming in from?
I'm coming in from Southgate, Michigan.
And of course, we have Tim Gazer. Hey, Tim.
Hey, Liming. Hey, Maddie.
Welcome, everyone. And the theme is this good wine? Maddie, I'm going to turn it to you.
As simple as the question may be, those of us who select wines for wine shops, for programs, for dinners, for restaurants, and those of you, there are undoubtedly some consumers in our tasting group tonight who trust us to select them for you, are interested in the question, is this good wine? I just want to set the story and why this subject is so near and dear to my heart. And the older I get in the industry, it was a while ago, I started with pre-internet, no mentor. I was in a secondary, probably tertiary market at the time, Metro Detroit. My whole professional life has been spent here. And who did I have as a mentor? The wine. And I'll never forget the first wine that touched me. I get chills thinking about it. I put my nose in the glass of who knows what vintage it was, Puligny Montrachet, and I went, whoa, what's that? And to this day, when people ask me what my favorite wine is, I go, Great White Burgundy. That was the first wine that spoke to me, though I didn't really know why. I recognized it. That methodology of recognition of quality, I very much related to recognizing quality in anything. Tim has a master's degree in music from U of M, and he can tell you why a certain piece of music is terrific in addition to being touched by it. And I'll just be sitting there with tears in my eyes because it's great. I really believe to my bones that you can recognize quality independent of a frame of reference. And yes, you can recognize cashmere versus polyester, right? You take one taste of any jarred tomato sauce and then have one taste of your nonas, you can tell the difference. To a degree, and I'm oversimplifying a bit, I think you can do the same with wine, but I think we're going to make our experience of wine collectively multidimensional, whether you're a buyer, a trade professional, or a consumer. And frankly, if this is your first experience with blind tasting, especially double blind, and we don't know nothing about nothing, look at it as fun. And those of you who are studying, I know the burning question in your heart, and I will answer it, are these testable? And I'll answer it. Some of them are, not all of them. But all of them are great examples of type. And all of them should be tasted, blind or otherwise, because blind does what? It levels the playing field. When you don't know, especially what a wine costs or how it's rated, guess what? You get to apply your own honed practice tasting technique. And the wine is welcoming us all. I thought it was important for us to share what are the classic quality buttons. It isn't that we're looking for these, they reveal themselves. Elements that make a wine good, even great. Quality of fruit to me is absolutely non-negotiable. There's a reason why we don't grow oranges in Michigan and we grow cherries and vice versa, right? So there's no faking quality of fruit, aromatically, flavor-wise, everything about it. So any wine grower will tell you that. This is a real classic characteristic that actually some of my colleagues early on in my career, and there I was in my early 20s, and they were working towards the end of theirs, and some of them were English, and they always paid attention to the length, how long the wine persisted. And I've been paying attention to that for decades now, and there's something to be said for that, though sometimes young wines will fall off a little bit early on, and then as they mature, they'll lengthen. Complexity and depth. I mean, there's no dishonor in being anything that's a one-note wonder. I'm not dogging Zin, but, to a degree, it tends to have a little less of a range of complexity as maybe some other grape varieties inherent in it. It doesn't mean you can't get wonderful Zinfandel, but layers of flavors, depth in addition to length is something that makes you go, I don't mind that I spent $100 on this baby. This was something that Tim reminded me to put it, balance. Now, what a wine sets you up for visually and aromatically and what it delivers on the palate and the finish. In a beautiful world, it would be nice if there was a harmony to the whole thing. There are some grape varieties that are tough without food. And that's born out of their growing region. You frankly don't drink some of this stuff without having a bite of something in your left hand. But that said, fruit and acidity on whites and tannin on the reds, how they play with each other and how they punch up or frankly mask other elements of the wine is important. Typicity. I mean, it can be an outlier, but frankly, if it says, let's pick something classic, French red Burgundy, Bourgogne Rouge, even from a young vintage, but a big vintage like 2020. And I put my nose in the glass and I go, does it smell like any Pinot Noir I've ever had? Maybe it's delicious. Maybe it's balanced. Maybe the fruit is great. Maybe it's well made. Maybe it's got length. It's not showing typicity for the region. And that doesn't throw it off the table, but it's a thought and or varietal. I've smelled things and I'm looking at the label and I'm going, it's telling me it's Riesling, and I don't believe them because it smells like Toronto's. And then finally, what I'm calling the je ne sais quoi factor. And this is when the wine is so good and everything is so integrated. A, you don't want to think about it, and B, it's mind-stopping, but you recognize the quality, you recognize it, and you may not even be able to express why. This list will come up again, by the way, midway through the tasting. Now, we always have some items to consider, elements to consider, and I put these three up for wine number one. They're a little different than the style of questions that we'll put up for just classic deductive reasoning. What element in the nose commands your attention? Because I find this wine aromatically effective, and I'm curious how you would define it. If you want to deduct, go for it too. Does the wine need food to balance the acidity? So that sort of gives us a little heads up on maybe what the acidity level is going to be like. And finally, how would you describe this wine to a friend? Those of us who were on premise for decades, we had like 10 to 15 seconds in front of someone to be able to like shorthand it and give them the baby truthfully in language that they would understand. When we look at color, again, we talk about this every time, against a white surface on an angle. And all of a sudden, tra-la, it's not just white wine. This is actually a true straw gun, I think, pale yellow with tiny green glints, and green telegraphs relative youth. And again, we're not rushing ahead to decide any damn thing. What we want to do is just perceive, appreciate, and perhaps define. So aromatically, and I intentionally didn't overtaste these because I wanted to keep innocent and taste them with you. And I'm going to taste them as if I'm a buyer for a restaurant, or we're having dinner together and the server just opened the wine and you look at me and go, you're the MS. What do you smell? What do you taste? So, first of all, it's not shy. It is fully and completely aromatic. And I get this poignant, even pungent, it throws my head back a little, impression of flowers, fresh flowers, citrus blossoms. And also, it just completely in tune with that, like lemon and lime. Wow, what a gorgeous aroma. It's cool, it's poignant. And there's something right underneath that some of you who are new to this may go, what are you talking about? There's a minerality to it, like wet stone, or a salinity like sea spray, like you're standing either at a lake or on the ocean. And so you have this combination of beautiful flowers and it's just expanding. Poignant lemon lime citrus and a strong sense of minerality that in wine speak we usually relate to European wines, also known as Old World, but also sometimes there are some grape varieties that I say carry rocks in their pocket. I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and taste it and not just get stuck on the nose, because when I've got 2 minutes with a supplier and I'm tasting, I want to assess the whole thing quickly. That's why I asked the question, and there it is. If you are quantifying the acidity, this is high by anybody's measure. It is mouthwatering. It is poignant. I'm going to immediately go back and taste it. And this is a sommelier secret. If an element of the structure is almost dominating everything else, I go back to it so that my palate gets used to it and I can taste more easily. And delicious. Thank you. It's still there, but here's another trick. If you're trying to determine flavor and tannin or acid is getting in the way, just hold it on your palate and you'll get the quality of the fruit and the depth of flavor. I'm getting everything I smell that's on the palate with, the almost silver toned relief of that acidity, like pure new silver. And additionally, fruit wise, not just lemon lime, but there is stone fruit in there, like white peach, also maybe a little green apple. But definitely to me, what's dominating is the mineral, the flowers, not unripe fruit, but quiet fruit. Tim, you want to add anything to just perception of flavor? And I got to tell you, the length, not only is it long, but it's expanding. It's like, whoa.
Okay, so there's a lot here. I have to be Inigo Montoya and sum up. We got all the fruit groups working, all 5 of them, right? So there's everything from underripe pineapple to green apple to white peach and nectarine to green melon, all of those things. And there's only a handful of grapes that do that for me. Beyond that, there's the mineral on the palate is profound. It's like, it's almost salty, but it's profound. It really dominates the palate. And then the acid takes over and it's like a liquid laser beam. But the thing about this wine, there's also, along with that mineral, there's a little sulfur and there's a little of something else in a little compact, combo platter that also helps me identify the grape. But beyond that, I'm going to keep going back to quality. This is really high quality wine because it's incredibly dense, focused, and it's rich, but it's not heavy. And it's incredibly well balanced. And if you are an acid freak, I'm married to one. My wife, Carla, drinks salad. She would love this wine. But this is such good wine. And yet, interestingly enough, for such a rich, intense wine, it's the alcohol is not very much at all. The acids
And
are
it's
high.
on its toes, isn't it? It's
Yes.
like an incredibly strong ballerina on point and not
Yeah.
getting off point and taking jumps on top of it.
Yeah.
I would say it also makes me wonder, gee, what will this be like in 2, 5, 10 years? There's
Like
Yes, our options here, Riesling, Albarino, Chenin, all have what in common? Acidity levels, correct?
Yeah.
I would say, Riesling and Chenin tend to lead the pack, but Albarino is not far behind in the aromatics, right? All three of them, depending on where they're grown, can show strong minerality, particularly, frankly, Riesling and Chenin. This, by the way, does it have any residual sugar? Ask yourself that. The tech sheet, the fruit is glorious. The tech sheet claims like 2.5 to 3 grams per liter, which means nothing with this kind of acidity level. It just digests it, much like Ultra Brut champagne will. Anything else about the 3 varieties, Tim?
Well, 2 of them are semi-aromatic and one is not. So 2 of them are more floral than the third, and both of those have phenolic bitterness, and one of them doesn't. So then you might go back and taste this wine, hold it in your mouth for about 5 seconds and spit it out. And is there any almond skin type bitterness on the finish? It's certainly got high acid. If you hold it in your mouth that long, you can feel it on your teeth, front teeth, tongue, and gums. Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to share the results. We have 50% on Riesling, 37% on Albarino, and 13% on Chenin Blanc. So quite a bit of explaining to do here, I think, because it's so different. 45%, I think this goes with the variety, are in Austria, and 38% are in Spain. And we have 14%
We didn't
in
give you
Australia.
Germany, did we?
No, we did not give Germany, but we are mostly in the old world, European world.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's
So-
delicious, isn't it? Mid
Yeah,
palate,
it
especially once your palate gets used to that acidity, then you can start tasting the peach, apricot, right? Ripe fruit, right in the middle. And by the way, note to self, what kind of foods? You can go one of 2 ways. You can do foods that are equally tart, or at least have some tartness, like squeezing lemon on top of branzino, and all of a sudden it tastes softer. I mean, quite literally. Or you can be sitting there munching on a fondue or something equally greasy, fatty, what have you, and the acidity will slice through the fat. And it's a dangerous combination. Don't try it because you'll just be going back and forth. Okay.
Yep.
So you guys want to reveal the,
Yeah.
okay, all right, let's do it.
And then we'll talk about why it's not what it's
What
not.
it's not.
It's not.
Yep.
And the flavor that you keep dodging, I guess, is
I don't think it's really dominant, Tim. But
Well, again, it's a combo platter. It's there with sulfur and mineral.
Mhm.
So,
But I didn't even go there because I thought,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
like
Well,
putting
as-
its handprint right.
yeah, but as the wine warms up, it gets stronger.
Right.
and it's getting stronger.
Great
Yeah.
producer in the Wachau in Austria. And Tim and I, with 5 other colleagues, went there last April.
Yeah.
So we're north, we're on the Danube. We're on the north slope of the Danube that runs east to west. And most of Austria's growing regions, with really no exception we're talking about, are in the eastern part of the country. This is at the far end of the primary growing regions in the Wachau that is known for both Gruner Veltliner and Riesling. And, in terms of climactic influence, it's a really cool place because, first of all, you've got, especially on the north slope, you've got terraces that are every bit as steep as anything you'll see in the Mosel. And you've got tremendous rocky minerality that varies from near to the river up front, and you've got these cool winds coming from up north, and then you've got warm winds coming in from Hungary to the east, the Pannonian Plains. I always want to say Pannonian, and it's
Yeah.
and it's neat. It's actually Niederösterreich is the larger region that embraces the Wachau. So the Wachau is the home of Prager, where all of their wines are actually, I believe most, if not all of their wines are dry. They produce a little bit more Gruner than they do Riesling. And to remind everybody, Gruner is Austria's, signature white grape. Something like less than 5% of Austrian wines are Riesling. So if you fall in love with the smell, which is the reason we went to Austria, because I was a pain in the neck of epic proportions, saying to Tim, we got to go. The smell of Austrian Riesling is just too good to be true. And you'll notice if you look, this is Steinriegel, which is a single vineyard on the far reaches of their property, very steep slopes. And it doesn't say it on the front label. It may say it on the back, but I believe this is Federspiel. That is the second of the 3 designations that are only used in the Wachau for ripeness quality.
Okay, so we should do a real quick primer. So why wasn't the Chenin Blanc and why wasn't it Albrecht? Okay, Chenin and Albrecht are both semi-aromatic grapes, meaning they have a lot of floral. They have monoterpenes, right? And if you have a thicker skinned grape that has a lot of monoterpenes, you have phenolic bitterness, even if you leave the juice in contact with the skins for a brief period of time. If you taste this wine, the finish is all acid and mineral, and there's really almost no phenolics whatsoever, right? If you taste Albarino or Chenin by comparison, it's quite phenolic, even though the acid's high, and they're both much more floral than this wine. On a scale of 1 to 10, the flowers in this were maybe a 3. There was TDN, right? So the fusel, petrol, whatever is there with sulfur, and it's there with mineral. And the more the wine warms up, now I think the TDN is starting to dominate the nose. So that took me to Riesling, but also the fact that it had all this different fruit. And then it was, it was like a liquid laser beam because the acid was so high. And then on the palate, it was mineral dominant. And really, this is exceptional quality because remember the fruit acid balance thing we pointed to in the beginning. This is just really focused, and the fruit acid are doing this really intense dance together. And wow, this is probably a 20-year wine easily. I don't know why you would wait that long, but yeah.
Qualitatively now and going on, it's A++ for whatever
Yes.
it's worth. Those of you who are native to this fun game, first of all, don't get flipped out if you don't pick up any of this TDN sulfur business. I think it's low on the meter. It's in there,
Yeah.
but it didn't even command my attention, which I love about Austrian Rieslings. I think that's a commonality, much less so than Clear Valley Riesling or German Riesling. And that part, pour yourself a little more and come back to it after the reds if you want a Christmas present, man, because it's going to continue to. The only thing it isn't so much disagree with Tim, but that for me, the florality on this was so poignant.
Yeah.
I just love that purity of citrus and flowers and mineral tied together.
Tim, just going back to Jerry's question, is there more phenolic bitterness in Albarino than Riesling?
Yes. I think for me, Riesling's very low on the phenolic scale. And so Chenin and Albarino both have more phenolic bitterness.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got the winemaker
That's a
here.
good one to. Oh,
There's Tony.
Who married in to the family and revolutionized the quality and the methodology of their production, and also was one of the 3 founding members of the Cows Quality Association, which is
Vinier Wachau. So it's the equivalent of the German VDP for the Wachau.
only fussier. The people that belong to it are just, quality freaks. and the best possible definition of that.
Wine number
Okey-dokey, wine
two.
number 2, and I'm taking a little sip of water because the flavor will not go away. And just to sort of reset myself so I can innocently pick up wine number 2. And by the way, you can compare colors like this against a white surface. When I look at them side by side, number 1 is definitely sort of very pale yellow or more straw, true straw with green glints. And wine number 2 is a true yellow. I don't think it's turned gold yet, but it's going in that direction. And just FYI, again, we're not drawing any conclusions, but white wine tends to turn darker with bottle age and red wine lightens. And also, when you see a darker color, a more golden color in a white, it can be an indication both of age, but also aerobic winemaking, possible barrel use as opposed to anaerobic. Just hold that thought, no conclusions. And aromatically, and now for something completely different. What it smells like to me immediately, and it is absolutely sexy in that it's integrated and complete, and I'm having to work a little to pull it apart, but it smells like perfectly ripe golden apples and perfectly ripe bus pears. And actually, I put the dominant fruit up here. That's what I'm getting. But also, we've recognized strong minerality in wine number 1. So hold the thought on wine number 2 and see if you perceive it at all. And again, we talked about acidity a lot in wine number 1, so you can compare it to the acidity in wine number 2. By the way, when I'm tasting to buy, I don't think. I totally turn my brain off. I'm not looking for anything. I am speaking the wine's language, which is not English, and I just make myself silent and receptive. And then, after I perceive the wine, both on the nose and the palate, I'll start taking notes. So, that beautiful ripe tree fruit, and in it is just a little bit of fresh vanilla bean, just a touch, but not obnoxious. It speaks to oak for sure, but gentle, very gentle. I'm going to take it on the palate immediately. I didn't get the minerality on the nose, but I'm getting it on the palate big time. And actually, the acidity, I got it a little bit, but it's more on the palate for me. A bit of a wet stone character. The acidity is not nearly as poignant as wine number 1, but nor is it lacking. It's medium plus plus to me. It's mouth-watering, palate cleansing, juicy. It makes me want to reach for something to eat. There is definitely citrus fruit, more maybe a little bit more sweeter lemon, like Meyer lemon. Floral, it's gentle and it's more sort of apple blossomy. Inorganic earth, we talked about, just this one comes across just slightly salty to me. Organic earth, I don't really get, maybe a teeny little bit of white mushroom, button mushroom. Oak aging, it's a touch, it's very deftly handled. I would bet money that asking myself, is there any new oak on this? Not much, but possible use of smaller, older barrels. There is a really neat, nutty smell, whether you want to call it cashews or macadamia nuts or almonds. It's a little bit of that sweeter nut smell to me that is speaking of leaves, and I get that on the palate as well. And maybe a touch of a little bit of a lactic character. I'm going to taste it one more time while Tim jumps in.
Yeah, I just a good call on all the fruit. It's much riper fruit. There's some sweet citrus. It's like I have Fuji apple and yellow apple and brown pear that is ripe. And
Higher alcohol, right?
yeah, the alcohol's a little higher. You've got some buttered popcorn malolactic going on here. You've also got some lees contact, and you definitely have some oak, right? I think predominantly used oak, but there's a, maybe, 10, 15% new oak versus the rest used. To me, there's a touch of minerality on the palate, that saline quality, but to fruit and winemaking kind of drive the car here.
How do you feel about the acidity? Do you agree with me? I mean, it's
The acidity is at least medium plus, but it's definitely not to the Riesling. Yeah.
so if we're speaking about tree fruit, oak, where are we thinking? I'm looking at the chat. Nobody's guessing. Would you say there's some hay? Sure. Texture. I think it's a combination of both round and cleansing.
Yep.
Dan Cox, Chardonnay. I love it. You put yourself right out there. So our grape varieties to consider are Pinot Gris, Chardonnay, and Melon de Bourgogne, all three of which, and Tim and I gently disagree on whether grape varieties produce wines that are non-aromatic or highly aromatic. To me, both, well, Chardonnay for sure, but Pinot Gris most of the time is non-aromatic and takes its expression from how it's handled. And Melon de Bourgogne, ditto, but that's high acidity and a definite different terroir breed of cat. Tim, what do you think about those three options?
Yeah, I mean, to me, yeah, we've gone back and forth. To me, Grigio can be either semi-aromatic or not very aromatic at all. Chardonnay, to me, is not semi-aromatic. It's all about winemaking, unless it's from specific places. And then Melon de Bourgogne is, to me, a pretty neutral in and of itself, and it needs least contact for an extended period of time.
Pinot Gris, to me, it becomes more aromatic the better it is.
Yes.
know,
Yeah,
if
without a
it's,
doubt.
if
Without a
it's
doubt.
like, commercial production level Pinot Grigio, it's not speaking to that. But I think the
Yeah.
mouthfeel on this, whoever asked that question, I loved it because
Yeah.
it is both cleansing and if you hold it, there's a creamy roundness to it as well. And what
Yeah.
I find interesting is the oak tends to reveal itself more here gently than on the palate. It's definitely for me not dominating it. And if there is a teeny little bit of bitterness, that could come from barrels, couldn't it, Tim?
Yeah. In fact, that's what I get on the finish is the oak. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
So Dwayne Miller is asking Cote de Bone. So Dwayne, here's what I want you to do. I want you to taste number 2 and then go back and taste the Riesling and you tell me. Okay. So if you do that, it should be apparent. And if not, we'll talk about why. Okay.
And we've got, by the way, Italy and France, which are obviously good for both Pinot Grigio and Chardonnay. France more dominantly for both Chardonnay and Pinot Grigio, and Italy for Pinot Grigio. California for Chardonnay for sure. Why did I put Argentina up there? Because high altitude Argentine Chardonnay is pretty cool stuff and
Yep.
will show strong minerality and
Yep.
ain't cheap. Mhm.
5 seconds left as these guys
What do
talk.
we have?
So
What percentage do we have?
72.
We're getting better. We're headed
Yeah.
towards
That's good.
100.
Okay, so I'm going to close out the poll, and we are at 65% in Europe and 35% in the New World.
So I'm going to tell you, the guy who made this is hugging you all, and is very, very, very happy to hear what you think the provenance is. It
Yeah.
is, as we reveal it, when we get on our. Don't forget, you guys. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I will also say that we are at 90% Chardonnay, 7% Pinot Gris, and 3% Melon de Bourgogne.
The pack rules. It is
Mhm.
indeed Chardonnay, but the question is from where? And I
Yeah.
would say, remember one of the things I asked, what kind of climate is this from? This is from an exceptionally cool climate, exceptionally cool. And there is a reason for its minerality. And yes, indeed, it does have oak on it. And where are we? We were in Austria, and now we are in
Skipping
Europe,
France.
folks. We are going across the Atlantic Ocean. We are absolutely going to, believe it or not, California, but we're going to Santa Rita Hills in Santa Barbara. And Greg Brewer is just dancing a jig right now because he has been committed for 30 years now to producing Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, about 50-50, from vineyards that start at 12 miles from the Pacific Ocean. And don't forget, we're talking about transverse east-west valley here. These are
Yep.
not cool breezes. These are winds. And I went there a couple of years ago for the first time and I realized it. However, what's the punchline with this growing region? It's got sun for sure. And they claim, one of the longest growing seasons in California. So he harvests well into October,
Yeah.
and he's
This is the longest growing season.
is
Yeah.
it cool?
Yeah.
And he's getting 13 and a half, 14 and a half alcohol, but it just gives the wine what he calls some heft. And if you don't mind, Tim, I'm going to read his comments because I
Sure.
got him on the phone. He called me at like 9 o'clock Detroit time, 6 o'clock his time, and he's pretty poetic. And what he's going for with Chardonnay is transparency and vulnerability and neutrality in terms of the winemaking. He calls it monastic and repetitive. I like that. Very simple. He doesn't adjust it depending on what vineyards. And he's got 4 that he's drawing from, in addition to some growers. But the punchline is long harvest window, rarely above 70, all whole cluster, fermented in tank, no lees disturbance. There's no batonnage on this. It just sits on the lees. He doesn't block mallow. He says there is mallow, but not too much. He thinks the mallow amplifies what he called the saltiness. And for those of you who want a little bit of Nerdville, he uses Marachais yeast that he says produces reductive, foamy, hot messes. But he likes
That's a lot of geek.
that's a lot of geek. But the barrel, he says no new barrels. He said they're all classic 60-gallon, 10 to 30 years old. Now, they don't always tell the truth. What they do, and I'm not calling Greg fibber, but Tim, you want to comment on any of his comments?
I want everybody to think about everybody who went to Europe with this. And I want you to think about French Chardonnay, Burgundian Chardonnay, and a wine with this much fruit with a little bit of oak. And I think there's definitely some saline type minerality to it, although I re-poured the Riesling and tasted it, and it's no comparison, right? In fact, for those who couldn't find the TDN, if you re-pour more wine, especially on the palate, it's not so much on the nose, but it's really there on the palate with sulfur. But this wine to me is all about the fruit, and it's really beautifully integrated oak, and there's this saline, salty kind of mineral quality. But if I have to say what's driving the bus, I mean, the fruit and winemaking drive the bus on this wine. If anything, this would remind me of a really good small producer, a Macron Village, or something like a Puy Vinzel, something like that. But it's certainly nothing in the Côte du Bon. Yeah.
You hold it on your palate. And the Macron is making excellent wines. It's
Yeah.
not a lesser thing. You
No
hold
doubt.
it on your palate and you get terrific pear apple fruit that to me is the
Yeah.
essence of Chardonnay. By the way, Greg makes a wine that he loves talking about called Diatom, referring to the little fossilized guys that he has in the vineyard. And it is absolutely no oak at any point in time. And it really is, when you taste it, sort of a cheerful New World Chablis style of Chardonnay. But I think, frankly, this is impeccably made. And I really wanted to show this because so often we dog Chardonnay. And the bar is very high on it. Remember, first wine that touched me, Lenny Marachais. My bar is high, but I just think this is, and we're talking around $30 retail. If somebody wanted a Chardonnay for a table and there was any concern about too much oak or any concern about who would like what, this is a safe bet. And I think it would wrap itself around all sorts of food. Actually, Greg offered this. He said, in talking about the wine when he does waitstaff training, like pre-shift, he doesn't like them to be too specific regarding dishes. He just says, there's the lemon, lime, salt, and oak combination, and it will hug a lot of food. And I refer to it as, a good guest that'll get along with everybody.
Just to clarify David's question and Tim, your answer, you're saying that there is oak, just measured oak, but the vanilla is still coming from oak. Is that right?
He said 10 to 30-year-old barrels. I don't know anybody who uses barrels that old. Nobody
He
does.
says there, some of his barrels he's had since he started the winery.
Well, that's great. I'm glad he can keep them clean. More power to him. Past 7 years, people usually don't use barrels. But to me, on the nose, when I put my nose first thing in it, there's oak influence. And then on the palate, there's quite a bit of oak influence. So who knows? And so, David, to answer your question, I think the vanilla is from oak. Yeah.
I want
To
to
me.
also point out that both Tim and Madeline talked about how this has more alcohol, but if you compare the back of the label, it says 13% for the Prager, and it also says 13% for the Brewer Clifton. This is not a misprint. In the US, with colas, with the certification of label approval, wineries are allowed to go +1 or -1 on the percentages. So it is possible that a winery is actually having a 14% or closer to 14% wine, but still gets the label as 13%.
And when you drive through it, it's just so gorgeous. You've got mountains on both sides, and you really understand the transverse valley thing. Some people get into this, oh, I won't buy any wine. He looks like that, and this is how he acts. He, by the way, taught French at Berkeley before he tripped into wine. So that's where I think a little bit of a poetic tone comes. But I don't get into numbers when it comes to alcohol. Sometimes it's interesting to know if it's commanding my attention or if it really seems deficient. But whatever the alcohol is on this wine, on both of these wines, it works because alcohol brings mouthfeel and weight to the wine. It isn't just about, the number. Anywho, I think both of these are quality wines and they perform in their categories. So Madeline would buy them both for her restaurant, Chez Madeleine. Okay. So we are looking at this again. Red wine gets even more interesting color-wise against a white surface. And what I'm getting is a true ruby. If you put your finger underneath it, you can see your finger, but you can't read through it. So there's some density. And if you follow the color from the very center to the very rim, the hue doesn't really change. And actually, there's a teeny little bit of purple or violet in the rim, which to me telegraphs either winemaking technique and or, age. Remember we said how red wines lighten with age, but the hue also changes and there's gradation of color. Red, blue, or black fruit or a combo. To put this in a frame of reference, Pinot Noir is generally dominantly red fruit. Cherries, red raspberries. Cabernet Sauvignon is generally dominantly black fruit. Malbec likes to brag about being blue, but see what you get. We're assessing acidity all the way along tonight, and I'm curious now that we're switching to a red because we have both acid and tannin to consider. And to Tim's point, we're looking for balance. Is the acidity refreshing or lacking? And this is sort of a touchy-feely question. I'm curious what familiar wine this reminds you of, something that you have with regularity and that hopefully you like. So aromatically, pretty. I must have flowers on the brain because I'm getting sort of violet, little lavender sensualis. And I get a combination. Oh, actually, the first thing I get beyond the flowers is spice, both like a pepper spice and a baking spice. I'm not saying it's Grenache level spice, and I'm not saying it's not Grenache. I'm just saying that the spice is in there and it's up front. There's a ripeness to the fruit, like ripe plums, both red and black. There is a little bit of an earthy element to this wine, organic earth, not so much inorganic. There is a little bit of a perfume character to it that ties into the violets and lilac. Is there oak on this? I'm not going to think about it because it's not speaking to me right away. If it is, it's probably on the neutral side. But it could be part of that spice, could be oak spice, but I'm not worrying about it. I'm going to take it on the palate.
I like the descriptors coming through.
Mm.
Shannon's Big Newton. Yep.
Fig Newton's great.
Oh, excellent. Anise, fig Newton, licorice. It's friggin' delicious, isn't it? The attack is delish. And I'm confirming actually all three fruits, but I think it's moving closer to blue and maybe gentle black fruit. There's the spice, right? The tannin immediately makes itself apparent, but it's like a lot of well-mannered tannin. It's not hard. It's in no way angular or austere. In my mouth, so tannin, tongue, roof of mouth, back of palate, acidity, sides, like sucking on a lemon. This is not acid deficient. I think the balance between the acid and the tannin is excellent. Don't you, Tim?
I do. This is pretty complex wine. Like you say, it's a combination of red, dark, and blue fruit. And I agree. On the palate, the blue and dark fruit tend to dominate, but they have lift, so they have some acidity. But for me, there's several things going on non-fruit wise. First of all, there's a little black pepper. There's savory herbs.
Savory herbs, yes.
Yep. And there's also, yeah, you're right. It's floral. It's like rose and lavender together. There's some earthiness here. And then on the palate, more than the nose, there's definitely some oak. It seems used oak, but there's light spice and toast and smoke and things like that. So this wine has a lot of different things going on. But what I'd like about it is the balance and especially the way the tannins are handled, because the tannins really seem moderate and almost gentle, but the acid really lifts the wine.
And the acid pushes the tannins forward a little bit. Acid and tannin work together. This comes off as young, right?
Yeah.
Which is also reinforced by the look of it. But
Yep.
quality of fruit is very high. So what are we considering here? Pinot Noir, Blaufränkisch, and Syrah. So let's start with Syrah in terms of options. We're talking about wines that tend to have a little bit of a darker color and definitely have spice, particularly pepper spice, but also have, the Jimmy Dean character of smoked sausage, etc.
Yep.
Frankish, which is a grape variety that sings in Austria, but also Germany. It likes cold climate and it does really well. It's a very good traveler, but depending on where it's grown, it will show you different faces. And it's also called Lemberger and Keck Frankos, just FYI. And Pinot Noir is Pinot Noir. We're all intimate with it. And I'm curious if you would consider this any sort of, verging on muscular Pinot. And in terms of, provenance, France for sure for Pinot and Syrah, Austria for Blanc Frankish, but also Pinot Noir, Washington State for Syrah for sure, and Michigan for Blanc Frankish and Pinot. Syrah in Michigan, Northwest, not up north. And when we say up north in wine language, we mean like around Traverse City, not the Upper Peninsula. I'm going to speak just a little bit to the production without giving it away. The barrels are all older. They're Burgundy barrels, 228 liter, but also they're using some 1200 liter barrels that are what they called in German Stück, and a couple of cement eggs. So it's a mixture of aging vessels, but the base wine is 100% fermented in stainless. 9 months aging before bottling, and I don't mind telling you, it's young.
I love Amanda's comment about incense. I got that a lot too. That was a really good call. All right, so great variety. We have 7% on Pinot Noir, 53% on Blanc Frankish, and 40% on Syrah. And then we have 17% on France, 30% on Austria, and 33% on Washington State, and 20% on Michigan. Maybe that is a nod to you, Madeline.
Geographically, we are all over the place, but fair to say, does it remind you of anything? Do you find it delicious, or is it offbeat? Is it more outlier or familiar, delicious flavor? And is it quality? I mean, we've spoken to a lot of complexity in this wine, and I think potential for aging. I will tell you as we reveal it that this place in the world couldn't make wine without big time defined lake effect. And yes, we are talking about the Great Lakes. And what does the lake effect do? It basically extends the growing season with warm winds coming in from the west, and cool spring winds delay bud break. So we are in an area just outside of Traverse City. The Old Mission Peninsula is where Left Foot Charlie, which is the name that Brian Ulbrecht, who's joining us in the happy half hour, arguably best winemaker in Michigan, including voted by his peers. He spent a little time on the phone with me yesterday, but you see that teeny little green finger right to the right of Leland? That's Old Mission. And Brian actually doesn't own any of his own vineyards. He has for the last several decades, like going on 30 years, championed individual growers, and he actually puts their names on the label too, which is really cool. And he makes all sorts of wine, both white and red, and killer Method Classique. But Blanc Frankish has become his thing. And if you go to his reserve tasting room, you can taste older ones. He didn't even like generalizing it. It sort of flutters between Pinot and Syrah in its expression. He's pulling this from 4 vineyards. And wait till you see the picture of the cluster. Can you go forward and show us that, Li Meng? This is interesting because go back one sec. He's showing both the different types of aging vessels and different barrel sizes. And then let's go to the cluster. He says it's a big cluster. The skins are thick. The grapes are big, but he's starting to play with different clones. So he may see a difference. What he noted immediately was it's easy to grow. It gets ripe in a cool climate, and even in cold years, they can end up making rosé or excellent sparkling wine from it.
Process of elimination. Yeah. Yeah, it's too savory, peppery for Pinot Noir and almost the wrong color. And then it's not rich enough for Syrah. So, but also I have to say it's spot on Blanc Frankish. It really is. So, and the tannin management is superb.
And he looks like a nice guy, and he doesn't get nicer than Brian. But also, all of a sudden, you think he's, the sweetheart farmer guy, and he'll get up in front of a room full of 50 people and speak spontaneously in paragraphs, right? Laser sharp brain, great broad frame of reference, but no false ego, just a doll. And I'm so glad that his wine is showing well. Yay, Brian. Thank you,
Awesome.
Lena, for letting us show Michigan wine. And I know I'm going to have to power through the next 3 because I only have half an hour of guys.
You do have to power through. And as Madeline said, Brian's going to join us during the happy half hour if you can stay to meet him. And Madeline, I want to thank you for putting in a picture of the Blaufränkisch grape. I think when we have such a fresh discovery, we really need to have the picture of the grape itself. So thank you for that. We're bringing this slide back up so that you are reminded of we are here to judge whether a wine is good or even great, as opposed to just blind tasting as we go into wine number 4.
And if you just think about the last wine, and actually all wines, 1, 2, and 3, we saw fruit, we saw length, we saw complexity and depth. I was surprised at the complexity and the balance and the typicity. I can't speak for Blau because I haven't tasted enough of it, and it varies depending on where it's grown in Austria and Germany. But I would say that the Blau for sure has that lovely je ne sais quoi for maybe an outlier. Okay, wine number 4. I have flowers on the brain tonight, so that could just be my little thumbprint up there. Quality of tannins, not just medium, medium plus high. What do they feel like? How mean are they? Or well-mannered? And ageability factors. So we're looking at this on an angle against a white surface, and we immediately see true ruby red in the center. But look what it does when you move your eyes to the very rim. Depending on the light in your room, there's a teeny weeny little bit of yellow there. That could either be bottle age, barrel age, and or the grape variety. There's some grape varieties that show that even when they're young, which drive blind tasting candidates crazy. Aromatically, it's pretty. I'm not hallucinating this. This is just the essence of pretty, ripe, black and red cherry fruit to me. Probably going to turn sour on the palate. And yes, a combination of dried flowers and fresh flowers, nudging closer to rose petal than anything we've smelled before. There is a little bit of earthiness in it, but that illusion of sweetness in the fruit is just spectacular, because I bet there's not going to be any actual sweetness on the palate. Somebody mentioned VA, probably in their volatile acidity. Tim's going to be the techno guy who will speak to that, but I wouldn't let it deter you or distract your brain too much. Let's take it on the palate. Mid palate. There's the fruit. The red cherry turns into more black cherry. The tannins are a surprise. The acidity is refreshing. The alcohol is a surprise, but somehow the structure is working together. I'm going to take another taste because the tannin, I want to neutralize a little bit with taste number 2. That image we had on the Riesling of a muscled ballerina or ballet dancer, could be a lady or a gentleman, on point or on the toes or leaping. This wine's got that. It's lifted, even with the alcohol and the muscularity to it and the drying tannins. Quite edgy for me, but it not so edgy that it shuts the flavor of the wine down. Definitely a strong inorganic earth component on the palate, almost dominating the fruit, almost washing over it. You have to sort of fight through it to get the fruit back. Tart fruit on the palate, maybe a little sour cherry, and we're moving into like rhubarb land. Definitely a pepper character, but to me, this is all about earth, dominantly inorganic, some organic, beautiful fruit and flowers. If there's oak in it, it's not doing anything that's annoying me. Tim?
Well, all I can say about this wine is wow. For a wine, first of all, from outward appearances, it's got the weight and color of Pinot Noir, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's like Pinot Noir with serious attitude, like monster truck pull Pinot Noir. Whoever said, yeah, there's a little bit of volatile acidity. It's mad. It tastes like from older barrels to me. Yeah, but here's the deal. One, the acidity is higher than you think. It's tannic, more tannic than you think, but the minerality is like 11. And it's a really gritty volcanic minerality. To me, it tastes like black pepper on your tongue, but with no black pepper. It's gritty. The whole middle of the wine is gritty.
Now, why
And then
volcanic instead of other minerality, Tim? Can you
it's that
define
gritty
that?
texture. That's all. For me, volcanic wines and the acid is medium plus plus, and the tannin is like medium plus and maybe higher. The alcohol, surprisingly, is not that high. But the funny thing about it, for all its power and intensity, it's not a heavy wine. It's
Right. And
a
you can
heavy
taste
wine.
through the tannin. You can
Yeah,
taste through
it's
it.
really something. So sanguine, Amanda, yeah, possibly sanguine. I think Rhone varieties. This is definitely not in the Rhone universe. This is something really different. So yeah,
We know the tannin profile in Nebbiolo. Is it there? Nerello muscalese. So we're talking Osso, right, which can have poignant tannins also. And Pinot. Are Pinot tannins ever this drying? Certainly, it can have inorganic minerality, maybe more organic earth. But the tannins, I'll just give it away, tend to be a little bit softer than this. I will tell you that my tasting group, God love them. We recently tasted a bunch of these. And what was interesting is that any food, be it just a little bread with olive oil or a lamb chop, immediately erased half of the tannin and the flavors just surged, which I thought was useful, especially since I think this wine has a terrific ageability. Because look at the aftertaste. It's slightly short, isn't it? You can feel it, but the flavor doesn't extend. I don't think it's a character flaw. I think I'm not ready for prime time. Give me a few years. How many people voted?
We're at 81%. And in interest of time, I'm going to give you guys the poll
Right.
results. So we're at 26% Nebbiolo, 71% Nerello Mascalese, and 3% Pinot Noir. And in terms of region, we're at 81% Italy and Oregon, 6%, and experimental plantings. That's kind of like I know it's
I
an
totally meant I
experiment
did
somewhere.
that. And the reason I did that is where the hell is Nebbiolo and Nerello planted anywhere except where they come from?
Yeah, that's a good point. All right. So we're going to reveal and we can talk a bit more.
And bravo to the person who said Oregon Pinot, because I'll tell you why. The reality is that single vineyard Oregon Pinot has grip, is very age-worthy, shares red fruit. There are other components that would have, but I don't think that was an outlier, a crazy punch at all. We are leaving Michigan. We are going over to Italy. And where in Italy are we going? To the Piedmont or to Sicily? And we're going to an area of the world, as Greek as I am, I'm going to go there at the end of my life because I just think Mountain Etna, it's like a knockout of epic proportions. I really do. And this is a producer I wasn't familiar with, Nicosia. It is not a contrada exactly, but it's a selection of vineyards. Interestingly, they're not on north-facing slopes. So the punchline with Etna, their vineyards started around 2000 and go up to 4,000 for Nerello Muscalese. A lot of them are planted on north-facing slopes, not much on the west, plenty in the north, the east, and the south. But you're at high altitude, and a lot of the vineyards face north to moderate the temperature. You're in Sicily, right? But what stuns me is the quality potential for Nerello, and I think it is on a vertical climb and just starting to shove its way into our awareness. And I'm thrilled. And what the tasting group I was talking about, the commonality between 12 examples, and they were all contradas, meaning single vineyards or vineyard selections. Incredibly pretty nose with strong florality, translucent, with firm acidity, both that dominating inorganic minerality and organic, dried herbs, and a little bit of saltiness as well. Potential up the kazoo. I'm very curious if you put it in the chat room, how old do you think this wine is? Because it's older than we think. It's a 2019. And there are two pictures on here that have nothing to do with Nicosia, which is a relatively new.
Fabulous photo of you.
At one of my happiest moments in life, I was at Terra Nera on the balcony of De Grazia's home with the
Nice.
foothills in the background. Everyone else was eating tongue. The vegan vegetarian was munching on some of the best bread I've ever had, and I was perfectly happy. And he had thrown out for us a range of Nerello Mascalese that really transformed my perception of what wine can be. Because this, by the way, on the right is what they do. When Etna spills, it doesn't erupt, it spills. They wait 20 to 30 years for it to degrade before they can plant. Look to the left. It hasn't completely degraded into what you'd called earth. Those are new muscalesa plants, incredibly rocky volcanic soil, and they're perfectly happy. Do you think this is a good example of type?
And also, if you put in a vineyard, you need a bulldozer and sometimes dynamite.
And note to self, if you haven't played with Etna, their whites made from Caricante move over Acifico and Chablis. White wine with rocks, baby. And the quality is as good at its best.
So everybody listening, Sicily is one place in the wine world where you must go. You have to go. It's one of my favorite places.
This is a woman-dominated winery. Evidently, the current family member is a woman, and Maria Carella is the winemaker. So that said, we need to roar along to get through wines number 5 and 6. This is to a degree apples to apples in some respects. Consider lesser, more complex than the previous wine aromatically. Consider the tannin structure, and you think protein would equally moderate the tannin. And what, again, does the color tell us? So let's look at this. There we are, and you can compare wines number 4 and 5. Both of them are see-through. Wine number 5 has it too, that teeny little bit of a changing rim. It's not the same hue as the center, and you can almost read through this. So thinner skinned grape variety. Aromatically, oh my God. The word that immediately occurred to me, Tim, was complex. I can't, this is not a one-note wonder. I'm getting flowers, earth, dried fruit and fresh fruit, dominantly red. I'm getting exotic spices like Indian spices, cardamom, garam masala. And I don't mean to get too precious about this. I'm going to go ahead and take it on the palate immediately, but just layer upon layer. There is oak in this, but it's integrated. It's not coming across as vanilla. It's coming across as general baking spices.
This one makes me ready for dinner.
You thought the first one was you thought number 4 was tannic. This is hard tannin. Actually, if you're at home, trundle in the kitchen and get a piece of ham or salami or cheese or bread and butter and go back to this, because this is an example of tannin that I would qualify as opposed to quantify. It is high, but it's also austere, hard. It actually shuts the flavor of the wine down and the aftertaste, but I don't get depressed because I immediately go back to the nose. Air. I know that all the flavors on the nose are coming through on the palate, because the minute I smell it again and then taste it again, there's the red fruit, both dried and fresh. There are the exotic spices. There's maybe a little bit of VA in this, but not enough to bother me. It's right. There's a significant amount of alcohol. I wouldn't be surprised if this was 14-ish, but that's okay. It's working. The acidity, much like wine number 4, the tannin's so hard, you don't even pay attention to the acidity until you pay attention to it. I think this is a wine that needs food to balance itself out. Tim, how about you?
Yeah. Well, everybody, listen, everybody, if you take, for science, take a sip of the wine, hold it in your mouth for about 5 seconds, and then spit it out. Okay. And this is a perfect illustration of grape tannin versus oak tannin. So this has, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 or 11 on oak tannin. Which is all the front of your mouth. I mean, it really dries the front of your mouth out. And then you also get oak tannin in the back, not nearly as much, but it's there. The acidity is high also, salivating. And the wine is austere because it's brown, dry, high acid, astringent, and tannic. And the alcohol is probably, somewhere 13, 5, 14.
Find the nose as complex as I do?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Now, you go back to the whole oak fruit tannin thing, because I always learn from this. This, to me, is dominantly fruit tannin with oak tannin.
Yes, without a doubt. Yeah, without a doubt. But, I agree with Dwayne said, red fruit. Yeah, red fruit dominant. It is ripe, it is fresh, and it is dried at the same time. There's sandalwood, there's anise, there's leather, there's dried floral like rose and potpourri.
There's an animal, right?
There's a little bit of sauvage, and it has both mineral and mushrooms in turn soil. And it's for grown-ups, right? There's nothing Hello Kitty about this wine. This is for grown-ups. Yeah.
What do the Italians say? They wait till all their guests leave, and then they take their best wines and sit on the back porch with their best friend and dish everybody who just left with the wine that they just opened that they were saving for themselves. So options here. Grenache, Sangiovese, Nebbiolo. And I especially put Sangiovese and Nebbiolo in there for all y'all who are blind tasting candidates who tie yourselves into painful knots about which one is it. So Grenache, in my opinion, would have more of, it might look like this, but it would have more of a straightforward peppery aroma and a little bit of a riper fruit character. Tim, would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And the savory, in fact, there would be less suffering involved when you're tasting. Yeah, I mean, this is really, I mean, this wine is work to taste and it needs 7 to 10 years in the cellar, or it needs something with salt, fat, and protein. Yeah. So then the question for everybody is then between your second and third choices, where are you going with it? Okay. And then we'll talk about that because that's a conundrum sometimes. Yeah.
But I will tell you qualitatively wise, to get back to our central heartfelt theme, I recognize this as quality. If you hold it on your palate, mid palate, the quality of fruit is terrific. And when I get that much complexity in the nose, I pay attention. Tim, do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Because my definition for complexity, and there's lots of definitions, is that how many things can you count that you smell and taste, and then how much does a wine change on your palate? And this nails both of those things, right? It's incredibly complex in the nose, and then the palate really changes and it really grabs your attention.
So here are the results. We're at 10% Grenache, 20% Sangiovese, 70% Nebbiolo. And then the region, we are at 10% France, 83% Italy, and 7% Australia. Yeah, it would have been interesting to taste 4 and 5 together and not give people answers in between and throw in the Nerello Mescalese in there too.
We could have done that. That's what we'll do next time. We'll taste two together and
Just to
then
mess it up even
reveal.
more.
Oh my God, you just set
I think-
yourself up.
All right.
As we reveal, and let's go for it and do it. When you're wrestling between Sangiovese and Nebbiolo, go back to the quality of the tannins as the biggie. It's not the only thing, but it's the biggie. Tim, do you agree?
Yeah, I do. You know, the tannins of Nebbiolo are just astringent and they can be coarse like this. Where Sangiovese, even something like Brunello di Montalcino, they're just not the same. I mean, they can be close to high, and there's also just more fruit in Sangiovese for me. Yeah.
And we are indeed in the Piemonte. We are interestingly not in Barolo. And not only is this Barbaresco producer, it's their Longa Nebbiolo. Hello. I mean, wow. What speaks to me, especially somebody who's spoiled to death and doesn't carry $100 bills in my wallet, wines that over-deliver in their price point, particularly, I've been out of restaurants for 15 years now, and my tasting book, every time I think I would pour this, I put in big caps, BTG, by the glass, and I shove my tasting book in front of a restaurant buyer, and I go, that honey, you know, because this over delivers at its price point. And we're talking absurd price, the quality to me.
Yeah, you can draw a parallel to really good producers and their Côte d'Aron to a really, really top quality Barbaresco producer and their Longa Nebbiolo. So it's the same thing.
This is a producer that's been around for a while, but not that long, actually, in terms of history. We're talking about the mid-1960s. It was founded, single family owned and operated, and named Monte Garibaldi after a Roman road that is nearby. You have some of this wine to sell, right?
We're going to experiment with it. Madeline was the one who kept telling me I should sell 750s.
Retail, right.
And so we have about 26 bottles of it that we've held back. So if you guys want it, don't one person order a whole case so that we can split it amongst everybody. You can get more than one bottle, but don't buy the case. But we are selling it and shipping is included no matter how many you purchase for $30 a bottle, which is the retail price. And we're just going to experiment. It's the one wine that's being offered on 750 today. And if it takes off, maybe that's one of the things that we do. And I'd love to hear your feedback if that is helpful or not helpful.
Ground shipping is included, Li Meng?
Yeah, I know. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But
I'm
you
not
know,
getting any percentage off this. I'm just
you're
saying.
not, but thank you for indulging me in this experiment. I'll bring it on again later. I want to just finish on the last wine as well.
And qualitatively, know that especially if you're pinching your wallet a little bit, you go to great producers and buy their least expensive wine, right? It's
Yep.
their hand. It's their vineyards. They're the vineyards, Nebbiolo's named after the fog, the nebbia that flows through. And I interrupted you, Liming. Were you going to say
I
something?
was just going to say, because we're pressed for time, we're not doing this, but we should talk about it during the happy half hour 4 and 5. That comparison, I think, is going to be pretty amazing because we're talking about Northern Italy and Southern Italy, opposite ends.
Apples to apples on several counts.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this shot.
The enthusiastic gentleman, Italiano family, who renamed it Monte Arabaldo, holding there must be a 3-liter, right?
Ooh.
Wine number 6. Okay, we're going to run through this baby, but with respect, and we can use it as our digestif during the happy half hour. How's that? How old do you think this wine is? Remember, we had one wine with a little bit of bottle age, wine number 4. Describe the aromas. Is this complex or monochromatic? And does the wood dominate or is it integrated? When I'm looking at it and I'm turning the glass, I learned this from Tim. Even to release the fragrance, you don't have to how you see people doing this. You're just going to annoy the wine. I'm not giving you more. Just turn it in the glass and and look at how it stains the glass. Thin skin, grape variety or varieties in here. That's okay. Don't worry about your palate. Just smell. That'll do the trick. So we can see that this is a thick skin grape variety or varieties. It actually feels even heavier in the glass, which could be alcohol and or dry extract, which Tim can talk to during HH. And aromatically, whoa, completely different. So integrated, and I'm just going to say it. The word that immediately comes to my little professional mind is vinous, which is the opposite of fruity. Vinous or vinosity is the word that professionals use when they're talking about wines that have evolved. It could be 2 years, it could be 10, it could be 20, because it depends on the wine, how much it needs. That this wine has transcended its fruity youthfulness and picked up aromatics that it would not have had without bottle age. I'm going to go ahead and take it on the palate immediately, and then I'll define both because I have a feeling that there'll be a oneness between the fragrance and the flavor. The attack is friggin' delicious. And frankly, our palate's gotten so used to hard tannin that this tannin's coming off medium plus and friendly with interesting moderate acidity, right? It's a little less on the meter. It could be the growing region or the grape variety. However, the fruit profile is very different. It's a combination of black and red, with black perhaps leading. Especially aromatically, I immediately get that I think it's a combination of a little bit of bottle age and also the grape variety and also wood, where you get this expensive Coach bag leather smell that's, in wine speak called Britannomyces, which is not necessarily a character flaw. It's like a very clean, beloved horse, right? Right. And a little bit of cedar cigar box, like expensive oak, right? But it doesn't dominate because the minute I go back to the nose, there's that black and red fruit, perfectly ripe, and a little bit of coffee, cocoa. Great call, Dwayne. Whiskey, cherry. Amanda is getting poetic. You must be inspired by Greg Brewer's poetry. And also, there's a ripeness to the smell that is more classic. It smells more like ripe black and red raspberries, quality oak, earthiness for sure. But in this case, we've talked so much about rocky minerality. I think this is where we can learn what organic earth smells like. This has got a mulchy smell to it, right? And by the way, look at those 3 grape varieties. They're all Bordelais. So this is a fun, playful, non-stressful exercise. And we could have even put Cabernet Franc in there if you wanted to. But it is thick-skinned grape. Ask yourself, is there a green element? Are there pyrazines in this wine? Whether it be bell pepper or mint eucalyptus. That earthiness is so beautiful. And any of you who are gardeners dying to get outside there and dig, and you probably already are if you're in Florida, or San Diego, where you get that combination of leaves and turned dirt. There's a sweetness to the ripeness to the mid palate that I love. The finish is sufficient. I wouldn't call it long. but it's fine. It's enough.
I would. The first word that comes to mind is just complex. Complex and also bottle age. It's just there's layers of fruit and yeah, hard to describe. It's actually earthier than you think. The wood is beautifully integrated, a little bit more tannin than you think, but the fruit really matches to it, that fruit tannin balance that we talked about in the beginning. And the nose just so complex and the palate delivers and the tannin management is beautiful. This is just really polished, well-made wine that has breed. It's from a good
Class.
source.
Class in a socially positive way,
Yes.
right? Quality class, quality
Yeah.
class. And I
Yeah.
love that Dwayne is going back, wondering if it's right bang, but no, this wine's a little bit of a fake out in terms of what grape variety dominates. If you're wondering whether it's Malbec from Argentina, ask yourself, I'm stuck on this florality thing, but to me, high altitude Malbec from Mendoza has flowers, soft tannins, black and blue fruit. Cabernet Sauvignon, the black raspberry and the cassis tends to pull forward with more pyrazines, green elements. And Merlot tends to be a combo of red and black, where the pyrazines to me or the green element comes across more in classic Merlot, more sort of minty, herby than bell pepper with slightly softer tannins. Would you agree with that, Tim?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Love it. Yep.
Yeah. All right.
So I just closed the poll. We're at 30% Malbec, 52% Cabernet, 19, almost 20% Merlot. So Maddie, help us out here. And then
You gave this to me blind, I'd be wondering. But I would say, I really would. I'd be going, I think this is Cabernet dominant, but I happen to know it's Merlot dominant. One could
Yeah.
say, I always call Cabernet in blends the little black elephant in the room. You know what I mean? You put
Yeah.
20% in there and it does stuff, right?
Yeah, it
From
dominates,
color
yeah.
to the tannin. The only reason I would say not Malbec, and I adore quality Malbec from Argentina, is I think the tannins aren't quite soft enough, and I think the fruit isn't blue enough, and I
Yeah.
don't think there's enough florality. Tim, would you agree with that?
Yeah, not only that, there's just not as much secondary stuff going on in a lot of Argentine Malbecs. Exceptions, of course, because I think of the single vineyard Nicholas Catena wines as being profound. But this has so much secondary type stuff going on, and it's more tannic than Malbec would be. And it's earthy. It's really, really earthy. So you're just not going to get that in Argentina. So
In Piedmont, we are not going far. We're going to Bordeaux. And we are going to the left bank of Bordeaux, but we're going to the northernmost outpost of the Médoc, which is, drumroll, Saint-Estèphe. And this is a third label from Chateau Ségur that is, interestingly, if you read about it, if you haven't gotten Jane Anson's unbelievable book called Inside Bordeaux, where like one paragraph on Lafite tells you more than a book. That's how good it is. The Ségur is not a classified growth, but by most people's measures that I trust would be classified a fourth or fifth growth if they're a reclassification. This is their third label, and it is a selection of vineyards that belong to them. It is from a drop dead vintage, 2016. It shocks me. I thought maybe 18, 19. It doesn't show bottle age that much. I mean, it shows layers, but it's really giving us so much complexity. And if you forgot it in your closet, as long as it wasn't hot for a few more years, it would do just fine.
Yeah. We did have 40% in France, but almost 60% in the New World and non-Europe. What can you say, you guys, that would help people really get back to France?
it's
Tim?
just too earthy.
It's
You know,
earthy.
it's just way too earthy. And I think about especially Cabernet family wines from anywhere in the New World. They're anywhere you want to go. And they are fruit and winemaking dominant. There are exceptions I can think of, like Powell Mountain Cabernets with earth, but they are not earthy like this. And
Look how close they are to the river. So
Yeah.
they've got a ton of gravel and clay limestone. So they have those of you who like, the nerd terroir factor, they have very complex soils. Isn't this a great ambassador for the Grand Vin, isn't it, Tim?
yeah,
Another example of, wow, you can't afford to put Felon on the list? Buy their third label in a 2016. I mean, as a buyer, just so we can transition into our happy half hour, you're training yourself so that, listen to this, it's so important. When Tim say, I like it, I don't like it, the reason why it means something is because, not because we're brilliant, it's our depth of experience and frankly, our purity of practice and intent over a long period of time in a disciplined fashion. So we
Yep.
want your I like, I don't like to have that kind of value. Is that a fair thing to say, Tim?
And to answer, Ivan, that's a really good question. Why is it not Rioja Grand Reserva? So, Ivan, as it turns out, last night with cheeseburgers, Carla and I had the 2020 Baronia Reserva Rioja. And
That's
yet
a good one.
traditional Rioja smells like bourbon because it's American oak. So if it's traditional Rioja you're talking about, the American oak is going to differentiate it from practically every other red wine. Yeah, because it smells like bourbon.
For those of you who are studying WSET, we do have tasting sheets for all of these wines. You can also go on our webinar page for the recording tomorrow, and there will be a link to the SAT sheets as well. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, it's called the Systematic Approach to Tasting, and we have something for you to sort of judge your answers next to. I also want to make sure that everybody knows that Tim is having volume 4 of his red wine conclusions on March 27th